All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas podcast. Corban Ford, Roundball Ramble. You know him. One of the best NBA writers, podcasters going right now. Corban out there in Denver, Colorado. No longer in Phoenix, Arizona. Corban, how are you?
You know, Chase, I am doing great. Always happy to be on the Chase Thomas podcast. Like, this is a fun tradition. Over almost a year now. I'd say over a year at this point, off and on, right?
I mean, I think closer to 2. I think you and Lauren and I.
Yeah, you probably.
Yeah.
It's old friends at this point. I love it. I'm doing good. You know, getting used to Colorado, like you said. But settling in. Definitely weird being among, so many diehard Nugget fans and just being like, congrats, I'm a Lakers guy, But it's been great. I have been enjoying it, and happy to talk ball as always.
There you go. Well, we are going to talk ball here on this very program, Corban, because there have been a lot of coaching hires now that every single coaching hire has been completed, with the Raptors hiring Darko to wrap things up here in a surprise kind of hire here down the stretch for the Raptors, and it seems like that being that hire going down to which is an interesting circumstance because if the reporting is correct that Masai was looking for someone who could handle a rebuild and someone who could handle win now team if they keep this core together, which is fascinating because the other report was that Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. are both likely gone from Toronto this summer. So interested to see what happens with the Raptors sooner rather than later. But this could also be your pick. But I think now that every single NBA coaching vacancy has been filled, Corban, I want to parse through on your end where your head's at. So what, in the positive way, what has been the best hire for you this cycle? Who do you think will end up being the most successful?
I'm really high on Frank Vogel with the Phoenix Suns. Kind of partial to Frank Vogel. He was the Lakers coach for 2 years. 3 years, my fault. Won them a championship in 2020, or helped, coach them to a championship in 2020. And I feel like at this point, the book on Frank Vogel is already written as far as what he's as a coach. He's a guy who is defensive minded. I think that he's a fairly decent communicator. Somebody who, if you have like an offensive engine that's pretty reliable, like he can kind of cobble together a decent defense to make it work, unless you give him absolutely nothing on that end, like we saw with the 2022 Lakers. Just no defensive personnel whatsoever. Then of course he's kind of toast. But if you give him a couple of good offensive players, he'll find a scheme. He'll put together the defensive players that he has, in his arsenal to really put together a decent squad. And I think we've seen that, right? Offensively, not the most imaginative coach in the world. The 2020 Lakers team, I think, was hardly, an X's and O's masterpiece. They had one of the greatest to do that with LeBron James, but it's not like they were just devising these amazing offensive schemes, right? We saw them in Indiana. Those teams weren't really known as offensive juggernauts, although they had offensively capable players. They're known for that defense, hard hat, lunch pail type effort. And I think those are the better examples of a Frank Vogel-led team. The lesser example would be a team that has either no defense, like we saw the 2022 Lakers, or no defense and no offense, like we saw the 2017 Magic. So, those are the two extremes. But outside of that, I think you have a really solid coach who's going to get the most out of the Suns on the defensive end. And also, let's be real, they just needed a different voice in the locker room. I think Monty Williams will run its course. I don't necessarily describe the belief that Monty Williams is this really, really good locker room guy. Just from some of the stuff you hear in terms of, the DeAndre Ayton and Jay Crowder and some of that. Not that they're bastions of, just on the up and up in terms of getting along with everyone, but they didn't have issues like this before. And so I look at Monty Williams as kind of the problem a little bit, not wanting to budge, being a little bit headstrong. So I think you get a coach, different voice, boom, and he's also comes with a known quantity of what he brings to the table. And I really am high on the Frank Vogel hire.
That's interesting. I think Frank Vogel probably is most set up for success, right, with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker. We'll see what happens with Chris Paul and what his future looks like and whether or not that might be with your Lakers here sooner rather than later as a fallback to Kyrie Irving being a realistic option for LeBron to get in Los Angeles. I look at this and I wonder who it helps the most, right? Is Vogel a good hire for Ayton? Probably, Like, that's probably good news for DeAndre Ayton that Frank Vogel's here. Who is it good news for? It's probably good news for Kevin Durant. Like, this is a good hire for them, and this is going to be a team that's going to be a really good defensive team that's going to help Kevin Durant in that way. Josh Okogie, probably someone who is a benefactor here from Frank Vogel. But I just wonder what the alternative is to Chris Paul, because, yes, you have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, two arguably top 10 players in the league right now, and both are healthy, which is great. But you saw depth come back to bite them in this postseason, and Chris Paul not being able to stay healthy, and them still missing already a fifth guy in their starting lineup because of how much they gave up for Kevin Durant and the Kevin Durant-Mikal Bridges trade. Like, I don't know what they're going to do this offseason. I'm curious, like, how they approach the league ball handler position. Do they, because it's not like they had that really. I mean, you had the Alex Caruso minutes with Frank Vogel. Dennis Schroeder. It didn't, like, there was more of a collection of guys there, and with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant being able to do what they do, I wonder how they approach this offseason in that regard. If they just, maybe it's Dennis Schroeder and they bring him in. Maybe it's somebody else. I'm very curious how Phoenix addresses moving on from Chris Paul after being waived, and what that actually looks like and what their realistic options are, right?
I agree. I mean, I don't know. I'm not super high on this player, but let's not forget that they do have, Cameron Payne still there. And, I mean, he's, I guess, average, if they decide to fully guarantee that. I mean, I would imagine that. I mean, I don't know. I'd say slightly below average, to be honest with you. But, like, he's serviceable. He's someone that they have that they could use there. I don't know, aside from maybe trying to trade Ayton to a team with cap room and shed Paul's salary with like a pick swap or something, because then they could kind of operate as a cap room team themselves, and maybe that's good enough to sign someone like Fred VanVleet without having to worry about a sign and trade while ducking the tax. It's a lot, and even then, the Suns are clearing up $27 million. Like, I think VanVleet's going to get more like 30 to 33. Like, that would be an extreme. That's like I call it the 2K play. Where you're trying to clear all this cap space for a free agent you might be able to get. And then if you don't, you are definitely screwed, right? But the Suns, I think they're going to probably stand pat. I mean, all the noise around Chris Paul, I'd be surprised at this point. I mean, Frank Vogel came out and said, listen, like, we're not waiving, or we haven't waived Chris Paul. That really means nothing. I mean, okay, yes, they haven't yet. Doesn't mean they won't. Yeah. And if so, then what? But I don't know if they move both from him and campaign, and maybe you think, hey, point Booker is a thing. Kevin Durant handles the ball a lot. We get a guy like Campaign already there. He could be our nominal point guard. We get a guy like Dennis Schroeder, who we saw, can play the point guard position and had a little bit of renaissance in LA last year. Get a guy like that who, can run the offense, at least execute a side pick and roll. Can you maybe knock down a three? Like, maybe they go that route and say, listen, it's going through KD and Booker, and then everyone else, you're just kind of there. Maybe they go that route. I feel like they go more that route than make the all-in play for a VanVleet or something like that. Just because the optics is, one, it doesn't look super great. I mean, you're kind of putting everything out there. But at the same time, like, it's all up in the air. There's no guarantee that it's going to work.
No,
in terms of making the room. Sorry.
No, I mean, I think you're right. And if I'm them, I just think, I wonder if fans are going to be like, oh, what are they going to do to kind of counter the Chris Paul waiving or trade for pennies on the dollar. It's like, they're probably just going to have to go cheap. Like, that's the new CBA. That's the reality, is like so many teams are looking at what's coming in 2024 with the drastic changes to a lot of these expensive teams, like the Suns will be with Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton, and Devin Booker. So my gut, I think Dennis Schroeder probably makes the most sense. Maybe Patrick Beverley makes some sense there. He'll be a free agent. I'd be reluctant to throw Gabe Vincent a bag out of Miami, but it just feels like he's the perfect incubator there. But like, wouldn't hate it. Maybe Javon Carter, because he had a really good year in Milwaukee. He's affordable. But I think it's going to be one of those kind of guys, those defensive first kind of guys to balance out campaign in those minutes, and whoever's got it going, that's where they'll go. But anyone who's expecting like another big name, I think, to share the backcourt with Devin Booker next year in Phoenix, I don't see it. One worst hire, who you think will be the least successful in this cycle, Corban? Who do you have?
I mean, it feels, I don't know. That's a tough question, only because it feels wrong to say the Toronto Raptors new coach just because it's like a new coach that we don't know. I just feel like all the others are really solid. You know, like, I like Nick Nurse in Philadelphia. I think that makes sense. Oh, actually, no, I have one. I'm over here overthinking it. Let's go to Monty Williams in Detroit.
Interesting. Is it the contract or just the fit?
Kind of bit of, well, a little bit of both. Like, the contract's crazy. I said, I mean, it's gonna even out. It's like when, you know, Mike Conley had the biggest contract ever, right? Like, it's gonna be a fun trivia question in a couple of years. But also, like, Monty Williams wasn't doing very good with a winning team. Like, he was doing good, but there was all sorts of behind the scenes locker room things. Now going with a young team, like, the only benefit from that is there's no real expectations. But we haven't actually seen Monty Williams. Like, when was the last time Monty Williams was with a rebuilding team? Like, I'm not saying that you can't become that coach, but like, he was on some New Orleans Pelicans squads. They weren't quote unquote when he first got hired, maybe. But if I remember, when they first got hired, they still had Chris Paul. Like, it was like a transition thing. So I don't think he's the guy for the job. It's like if Doc Rivers got hired for it. I'm not saying that they're very good at coaching competitive teams, but they're better, you know, in my mind, inclined to coach veteran win now teams than they are for young personalities, young NBA players. Like, if you can't manage established NBA vets, you know, Jay Crowder's been a journeyman for a bit, but he's been around. Locker room guy for the most part. Haven't heard a lot about him. DeAndre Ayton is one of those kind of superstar guys you kind of have to coddle a little bit. You know, number one pick, got the pedigree that goes along with that. Like, you failed on both counts, sir. And now it's okay. Now you're going to go to a team that has a number one pick, former, in James Wiseman, has another current, former one in Cade Cunningham. You have Jaden Ivey. You have another high first-round pick you have. You know, you got to figure out the Wiseman fit along with, I'm trying to think of their other big. I'm drawing a blank now. You know what I'm talking about. I like him, too. That's what's annoying.
Durant.
Thank you, Jalen Durant. Appreciate you.
Durant,
like, there's a lot to manage, both roster, depending on who they select in the draft. You know, how are you going to manage Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, making those two work, making them both comfortable in their situation, you know, managing the bigs. Like, that's a lot to do. And you think that Monty's the man for the job. Not only that, but you think he's the man for the job to the tune of the money that you paid him.
Yeah.
A little rich for me, a little much, kind of a stretch. We're doing some real mental gymnastics. We are in the Olympics of mental gymnastics for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess there was like that reaction where people were like, look, it's not our money. Like, who cares how billionaires spend their money in terms of coaching contracts? So it's like, well, we'll see what this means for other coaching contracts. Because it's like, if Monty got this, then other coaches are like, whoa.
That's Monty Williams. Like, if Monty can get that, come on now, fork over.
Right. And Monty,
I'm surprised Vogel got paid less. Sorry.
Yeah, but also Monty, like, hey, I'm like, it also tells you everything you know about this Pistons job, right? Where Monty was probably like, because look, this is job number 3, right? His third head coaching job. Like, this is probably it for him. Most guys don't get 4 or 5 head coaching jobs around the league. Like, you just don't keep cycling. It's just, there comes a point where you are no longer getting those. You're not getting, like, the Doc Rivers stuff is pretty rare, but Doc might be out now. Like, he made it through the cycle, and this might be it for Doc.
And he's been a coach for a few teams.
Right, and he might now be at the end because he was rumored like a favorite for the Phoenix job for a while, and he doesn't get it. And that just might be it, where enough teams have been like, all right, like, Doc can get us here, but now there's so much evidence post-Boston that, like, he's probably not the final piece to a championship puzzle, and, like, maybe that means he's just not going to get another NBA head coaching job. It's possible. Terry Stotts bounced around, and now Terry Stotts is going to be the lead assistant, I think, Milwaukee? He's back in Milwaukee with Adrian Griffin and that staff. But I doubt he gets another full head coaching job. Like, there's just a lot of options. Like, the way I look at it with Monty, this is a bold move from him, where I think you and I are on the same page when it comes to where the Pistons can go. Like, Bojan had a great year this past year, but, like, it's going to be very big heavy. It's going to be a team that does not flirt with the top 10 in offensive rating, I would say, next year. I would say Cade Cunningham missing a lot of time did not help things going into next year. Jaden Ivey looks fine. I didn't see like superstar from Jaden Ivey this past year. Maybe he can get there. I don't see it necessarily. I still don't really love the fit of him in Cade all that much. We'll see. Like Killian Hayes seemed like he took a leap, but like again, another basic non-shooter who I don't think is a starter on a good team. I think he's just more of a, I don't know, more of a third guard, more of a Dennis Schroeder, those kind of guys where it's like does a lot of little things well, could be a good player on a contender. I just don't think he's a core piece. And then you're like, well, what do you really have? And you get kind of screwed in the lottery, the 5th pick. So I don't know. I think Detroit just doesn't have a lot of stuff that I like. I don't really understand what they're doing. I don't really understand what they're building, what their identity is going to be. I think Monty's walking into a really tough spot. And because of that, he saw it and was like, all right, no. How much money are you willing to offer for me to walk into this kind of position? Because I just think he's going to lose a lot of games. And I don't even think it's going to be necessarily a fault of Monty. But you look at this roster and you look at the East right now, Corban, like who's falling out? Like who do you see the Pistons passing in the next 2 years? Because that's going to be a big 2 years for him. And I look up and down the East right now. I don't know. I don't see a big option for the Pistons to break through. And I don't even know who on this roster right now profiles as an all-star in the next year or two in the East. I mean, maybe Cade, maybe.
I was thinking maybe Cade.
But like, is Cade, has he shown you enough that he's going to be one of the best guards in the NBA in the next 2 years?
Well, I mean, injuries have kind of made that a thing,
yeah.
Right? So I don't know. I agree with you. From like what we've seen, there's been flashes, certainly.
Yeah.
Like, is it long term? Like, oh yeah, just wait till he gets healthy. No, it hasn't been enough. But it also hasn't been enough for me to go, when he has played, I'm not going, oh yeah, like, he's a bust. There's no Ben Simmons happening right here. Speaking of that, the teams I could see fall is probably the Charlotte. I don't see them climbing out very quickly unless they take Scoot Henderson, like they did Brandon Miller. Like, good luck. And then also, I could see Brooklyn going down for sure. I definitely don't see them as a team on the rise. Figure out what happened with Mikal Bridges. Cam Johnson's free agent is going to be big. Like they have to pick a direction now. And I think that they picked the rebuilding one over the, okay, let's retool. Because you had Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Like, as troubled as that situation may have been at points, I don't think you get a better contention window than Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving for the Brooklyn Nets in the next 2 years. So I feel like if you're going to stand pat, they're probably going to fall out. We saw how they were post-trade deadline. And if so, like, they could end up, all they need is an unfortunate injury, and I could definitely see the Nets in the cellar. So I say the Nets and the Hornets. And then also, just for kicks and giggles, I'll throw in 2 more teams. The Bulls. Don't know what direction they're going with.
Bulls are a good sneaky pick. They should. The Bulls are a team that should. I just don't know if Arturas, what is it, Kornikovas?
Corvonis?
Yeah, I don't know. He was a build through the middle in Denver guy. Like, and I just don't. And Chicago is not the kind of market, and Reinsdorf has never committed to a long-term rebuild there. I just don't know if they'll bottom out. I think they're going to just refuse to face the reality here.
And that's fair. I think they'll just lose. Like, the unfortunate thing about them that's not Denver, they're not good enough to, like, just be like, oh, we're going to stay in the middle. Like, that's the goal, which they joined the other team I'm about to mention that also tries to play the middle, the Washington Wizards. Yeah. A team that, okay, we're just going to try to play the middle and make the play-in. And you're just not that good enough to just think that your goal is to be in the middle and you can do that.
I think the Wizards actually are going to blow it up.
Injury. Huh?
I think the Wizards actually are going to blow it up.
Oh, with their new direction, I'd hope so. I mean, good luck trading Bradley Beal, but, like, that is my hope. Just because it actually means picking a direction that makes sense.
Also, but again, we're very close to my dream scenario. I think you and I talked about this a few weeks ago. Bradley Beal for Shaedon Sharpe and maybe the number 3 pick.
You did say something like that. You do have a mix. You have that's assuming, of course, that that's enough to get Damian Lillard to stay.
I think that's enough. I think Damian's looking for a reason to stay. Like, I think he
is too. But Bradley Beal, if Bradley Beal's the answer, I don't want to hear the question.
I think it'd be fun though. I don't think they win the title.
It'd be a fun backcourt. Oh, I'd 2K the mess out of that.
Yeah.
But that's it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Like, two guys who are,
like, he's better than McCollum.
He is. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't even say that now.
Would you not?
No, I wouldn't. Just think about what he did last year.
McCollum's been on a good team again, and now people like McCollum a lot more. He's on a good team.
Well, I just think McCollum actually can play point guard and has some more versatility. Bradley Beal is kind of what he is. He could sort of play point guard, but not really because you always have to have another guard. We've seen what they've done already, cycling through, Spencer Dinwiddie, Monty Morris, before that Russell Westbrook. Like, he obviously needs somebody to play alongside him. Where CJ McCollum's been the point guard. Now, is he like one of the top tier point guards? No, but he's been a serviceable point guard while still being able to get his points. So I think there's just more utility and flexibility that McCollum brings to a lineup than Bradley Beal. Plus, McCollum has proven, like, he's hit big shots in the playoffs. Bradley Beal's been in the playoffs. I don't know.
I guess I'm a Beal guy, and now that DeJounte Murray might be on the market for Atlanta, like, I'm at a point where if Washington's up to it, I would flirt with Bradley Beal and Trae Young just to see what it looks like for a couple of postseasons. Like, I don't think you can win a title with those two. It'd be horrific defensively. Do I think it'd be a lot of fun though? Yeah. Do you make out the play-in? Yeah. I'm being a little hard right now. Yeah. I mean, also. Probably. What do you think Cade shot from 3 last year? Say 33%. He shot 27% from 3. Jeez. Not great. Not great, Chief. I don't know if the shot's there. I didn't see it a lot in college. And if he's just like him and Killian and Jaden, I don't think is going to be a 3-point assassin. Like, I just look at this group and then you go so big heavy with Durant, Wiseman, Bagley. And they were 28th in offense and 28th in defense. They won 17 games last year, Corban. I don't think they're close. Like, and there's just not a real path for me to see that. Like, I'm excited about any of these guys. I'm most excited about Cade of this group, but I don't know what he is. Like, I don't know if he can be, if the shot's not there, I don't know. I don't know what he can ultimately get to as a player that makes it all that worthwhile. I don't even know who he reminds me of. Like, when I watch Cade, there's not a past player who jumps out to me. Is there someone for you that he reminds you most of? Honestly, for Cade, I mean, I do have one. I do have one. Let me see if you think about this. What did you think about this? Wasn't a super great shooter, but had some couple of solid years, tall playmaker, could go off. Penny Hardaway. That's best case scenario, right? Yes, but I'm saying I see, like, he has this easy way about, like, he hasn't shown. I mean, Penny wasn't the best 3-point shooter. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Penny had flashes, but I don't know if Penny's first year was. I mean, I gotta compare. It's also different eras. They didn't try. Like, it's completely. Yeah, different. I mean, like, what would Penny have looked like if he was doing it? Yeah, I mean, he came around. I wouldn't say he was before that. He came around in the 90s. Yeah. Like, he is a career 31% 3-point shooter. He played from 93 to 2008. So, like, he definitely crossed that 3-point range. Like, even if you want to say, like, it wasn't a huge part, it's not like he was playing in the 80s. Like, he had a couple years where he shot, well, not really. He had a year, nope, not really. He just wasn't a great 3-point shooter. Like, that's the guy I think of. Like, he still put up good numbers. He had a season 20 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists. 21 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists. 24 and 5, 15, 5 and 5, 16, 5 and 5. Like, big boxy numbers, right? Went to a couple of conference finals, went to an NBA finals, went to the playoffs a few years, obviously battled injuries. Same thing there. Didn't really shoot 3-ball well. 26% rookie year, 34%, 31%. The most threes he took was in his 4th season. He took 4.5 threes a game, made it at a 31% clip. 30%, 28, 32, 25, 27. Like, the dude got him up. I mean, for his career, in total from 3, I'm trying to look at that just to make sure. He made 503 threes. He shot 1,591 of them. So, like, he can shoot, or he did shoot them. That's kind of the comparison I get. Like, a guy who can go off, but he's gonna be like, I don't think if he's your best player. We saw the 97, 98 Orlando Magic. Like, we know how that goes, right? Like, if he's your best player, no. But if he's your second best player, depending on how dominant your best player is, like Shaq 95, that could happen. I think Cade's more like that. I mean, people are comparing Luka Doncic, stuff like that, like hard pass. Like, I don't think that's realistic at all. But I think Penny Hardaway is more than realistic. I just think Penny Hardaway was a good player, and so is Cade. But guess what? Injuries affected Penny too. Who knows how good Penny could have been if injuries had affected. Now, we know Penny was what he was as a shooter. Like, that's established. But he could have been probably better without those injuries. And unfortunately, maybe we say the same for Cade. It's still too early to tell, but that'd be my comparison. I don't hate that. The Wiz. Switching gears here a little bit. The Wiz. We talked about Adam, Bradley Beal, Michael Winger coming in from the Clippers. it's pretty big hire. Like the Wiz have just kind of pushed against a full-on rebuild here for a long time. I don't know what this means for Kristaps. I don't know what this means for Bradley Beal. Johnny Davis, big work in progress, showed a little bit of flash late this year. Maybe he can still be something. I don't know. Really rough rookie year as a whole for Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin for DC. But I don't know. This is kind of fascinating. Who stays, who goes based on where the Wizards are. It seems like you're in favor of going the full on, just tear this thing down. And I think this is probably the closest that the Wiz have come to the full on tear down, be bad for a while in a really long time. But I think it's welcome. I think this is what they should do. What do you think?
I think it's still too early to talk as optimistically as you were talking right now, Chase. But
Okay.
I agree with you. No, I don't trust it. Like, yes, new management until they don't re-sign Kyle Kuzma, until they let Kristaps Porzingis go, until Bradley Beal is traded or on the block rather. I'm going to assume that they're going to do what they've always done because they've given me no reason to think differently, right? Like we've seen this middling Wizards team. We saw the 2018-2019, the 2019-2020, 2021-2022. Like we saw this. We saw this from back when they had John Wall and they weren't trying to rebuild. Even when he was getting constantly injured and it was like, okay, you know what? Scrap it all, build around Bradley Beal. Like that didn't happen until the very end. Like by the time Wall was done, like by the time they gave up on Wall, like Wall had been done for like 2 years. You know what I mean? Like that's the Wizards right now. So until they change that, I'm not inclined to believe that they're going to. Because you're right, this is the most perfect point to do it right now. Get the draft pick that you have coming in. I think they're 8th if I remember, something like that. Give all the minutes to Johnny Davis, and I mean that he had at least a promising second half of the season. Like he wasn't great, obviously, for most of the year. In fact, he was downright awful. I think we saw that from summer league. So like, yeah, if they do something like that, get like an Anthony Black, or like if they go that route and just build around their young players, then there's some hope there. I mean, I would look at young guys. Corey Kispert is relatively young. Daniel Gafford's in that range. Jordan Goodwin's not old, not necessarily. And then of course you have, the draft pick you bring in. Of course you have, I just mentioned him just now. Johnny Davis, like that's not a great core.
No.
Totally understand that. You're definitely looking to 2024 and maybe even 2025. But at least you pick the direction. It's rebuilding. See what you have in the young players you have. If not, look to acquire more assets, draft picks. You know how to play the game. At least Washington should know, right? And then go from there. But as of right now, I mean, I have no reason to believe that they're going to yet. They made a nice move. Great. Like, that's awesome. And honestly, like, complete, no sarcasm. Like, very good for them to do that. One step in the right direction. But it's one thing to do that and make a big change. Another thing if you're going to make a big change and then give the same old marching orders you've been doing.
That's fair.
So, we'll see.
I guess I'm just a bigger believer that they do it than the Bulls. Both should. I just feel like the Wizards too, like the Bulls at least have a couple more pieces, intriguing pieces. Like you still have Patrick Williams, you still have Zach LaVine. Like the Lonzo Ball thing just sucks. And if the reports are true, like that he really might never come back and that he's gonna be like that sucks. All across the board because I mean they were flirting with the best team in the East last season. Like, that was not long ago that this team might have been a 1 seed overall. So I at least understand a little bit. I still didn't believe in them with DeRozan and LaVine and Ball in the company to, like, actually get through the East. But you could at least sell that, right? Like, you could sell that for 5 years, 3 to 5 years, whatever.
I can see the vision. I mean, I don't agree with
the
it. The
Wizards, there's no vision. Like, you won 35 games. Like, Bradley Beal is not like he's not getting any younger. Like you don't have to sign Kyle Kuzma. Like Kristaps Porzingis is giving you a lot, which is great. Sell high there. Like the injury stuff and everything else. Like you have something, but outside of that, it's not like Johnny Davis needs all like Monty Morris, Delon Wright, who I like, Kendrick Nunn, Jordan Goodwin. Like it's just very easy for them to bottom out, and what that means is just moving on from Bradley Beal. You'll probably get some good stuff there. Not re-signing Kyle Kuzma, which is not hard at all. You should not pay whatever it's going to take to bring back Kyle Kuzma. And then just sell high on Kristaps Porzingis. Like, that's it. That's all you have to do. And then you're suddenly one of the worst teams in the NBA, and it's not really particularly close. Exactly. And those aren't going to be hard. Those should not be like the hard, I don't know, man. I really like it's like you're just bad. You were bad last year. You're a 35-win team. Like that was best case scenario. You got a healthy Kristaps. You still got a lot of Bradley Beal. You are not close to being a good basketball team with this core, and there's no path for you to be a good basketball team in this core. So I think they should, and I'm very, very interested to see what the Wizards do, because I think they're going to be a sneaky, very, very fascinating offseason team to monitor. Speaking of offseason teams to monitor here, Corban, your Los Angeles Lakers, LeBron, Dallas, Kyrie, lot going on there. What are you thinking in this regard? Is there part of you that's like, that LeBron gets hurt, he plays hurt this postseason, you push as far as you can, you get to the Western Conference Finals, you get swept, you didn't have that third guy. It's kind of what's happening with the Heat, where it's just Jimmy and Bam who's having a good series, and they just don't have the options. Like the Nuggets have so much firepower, they're so deep across the board that the Lakers just didn't have enough at the end. Like the Rui Hachimura ISOs late finally came back to bite them in Game 3 and Game 4 there, where it was like, oh, they don't know where else to go. And when D'Angelo Russell plays as poorly as he does late in that series, you can't survive that way. So LeBron and Anthony Davis know that. Like they know they need somebody else to keep this thing humming, and with their age and their injuries and just the mileage on both those guys, I'm very curious what they do, because my gut says CP3 ends up there. I think that's how they do it, and they bring back Schroeder, and they just run it back with those two as their league guards, and they see what happens going into next year, and if CP has to sit for defensive possessions, whatever, and they figure it out, because Schroeder actually really, really works for LA, and I think he's just someone they'd never want to give the ball to, they never want to pay, they never want to bring back, but it's like Schroeder just plays well, and he just blends with LeBron and Anthony Davis, and he's just a great defender. He had a great postseason. I think they should bring him back and make him a priority this offseason, but we'll see what happens. What do you think happens? Do you want them to stay small there? Do you think there's a party that's like, what if LeBron, we just got off this and we really blew it up? Is there a party that's like, maybe we do bring in Kyrie, we find a way to get Kyrie and we run it out last dance style with LeBron, Kyrie, and Anthony Davis, and then LeBron retires after next year? Like, where is your head at with all this, and what do you think happens?
I mean, part of me was so happy to see just a winning Lakers team, like a team that looked like, wow, we have a good chance of winning this game, after like 2021 where we were really good and then injuries happened, then 2022, which was just the season from hell, right? Like last year felt like, wow, especially after the trade deadline, like I like this group. And part of me just wants to take this group and run it back. Everybody, like, let's see if Malik Beasley finds a rhythm. Let's see what happens with Mo Bamba. I like him as a.
So you want to pay everybody, like Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell, whatever it takes.
Part of me wants to.
Okay.
Right now, the only two I know I want to bring back for sure, if I was running the Lakers front office, is Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura. Right, like those are givens to me. They're young.
Rui's a given.
Yes, I mean Rui thrived in the postseason. He could play on the court with LeBron and AD. In these big lineups. Like, he did a decent job. Like, yeah, mind you, they had him guarding Nikola Jokic. Like, come on now. But, like, aside from that, like, yeah, I was very happy with the Rui Hachimura played. Okay. Also, Austin Reeves. Like, the dude showed poise. Both
Austin,
those
I think,
guys
is the biggest
did.
priority.
Exactly. So I bring both those guys back. Like, that's what I say, just straight out. Now, D'Angelo Russell, I'm partial to Russell. I was a Laker fan. Been a Laker fan for almost 20 years now. But, like, I was a Laker fan back when, D'Lo first got drafted. You had those lost years, right where Kobe was definitely declining and toward the end, and the Young Bucks and him and Julius Randle. And, you had, what is his name? Oh, my gosh. Larry Nance Jr., thank you. Like, all these guys, of course, like, that was the group. They weren't great, but they always had this weird knack of beating the Warriors, when the Warriors came to LA after, I'm sure, a long night out. Like, I remember D'Lo from back then, and he's been a bit of a journeyman, too. It's been Brooklyn, right? It's been Golden State. It's been Minnesota. But he seemed to have had a nice little rhythm the first couple of games with the Lakers, and then a bit here and there throughout the playoffs. But we saw him just get shut down in the conference finals, and that's kind of worrying. Especially given the money he's looking for. If it was like just a role player, bring him back too easy. But if he's looking for more like 30 million, like, mind you, you're not getting that. But also, like, maybe you get 25, 26. Maybe you get like then a 23, 26 range. That's still a little rich for my blood. And I would say a little rich for the Lakers' blood. So he's on the fence for me. Malik Beasley and Mo Bamba, probably the best way to trade those guys and get like maybe an impact player. I think Mo Bamba's salary, bring that and like the number 17th pick or something, and that might get you. I wouldn't be fond of this, but that might get you a Alex Caruso or something like that from Chicago, since they don't have draft picks. This year, and I think next year is like top 10 protected or something. Like that might be enough. Either way, I think that you package Mo Bamba and Malik Beasley, maybe a second or something together to get matching salary and an upgrade for the Lakers. Like I see that happening, but that's where I would go. You have your two guys that you bring back regardless. You have your one guy who's kind of on the fence, and then you have your other two that you're trading, right? As far as Kyrie, like I wouldn't be against it, but I just don't see any way that happens, that you bring in Kyrie and keep all the guys you have. Or bring in Kyrie and keep the two main guys you have. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
Is Russell back for you?
Possibly. It might be a marriage of convenience in that maybe, the contract that Russ wants, that D'Angelo wants isn't out there. So I can't say Russ. Russ is with the Clippers. I'm not messing around.
Well, not even really the Clippers anymore.
No, I think it's going to be, I think he's moving on too, just because he actually outperformed, the minimum contract, which I always knew he would. Like, he wasn't a minimum player. He just wasn't a good fit for the Lakers. But moving right along from that, I think that D'Angelo, I think that he might, I think it's a good chance he comes back to the Lakers. One, Lakers have interest in bringing him back. I mean, he was better than they've had a point guard over the last couple of years. Two, I don't think what D'Lo's looking for in the market is actually out there. I think it's kind of a little bit of a pipe dream. So maybe it's like, hey, we came back to each other. It works out well. Basically, what they were always saying, give us a training camp and make it happen. And I do think there's some reason to believe that if you give D'Lo a training camp with these guys, he can blend in. He is a good shot maker. He's a very good three-point shooter. He can, put the team on the back for a couple of quarters, a couple of games here and there once in a while. It's not something you can always go to, but there's some upside there, right? 27, still in his prime, So I wouldn't be against it. Let me just say that. But I don't know if that's where they go, but I lean more that way. As far as Chris Paul, if he's available, I think he's a Laker, and if so, boom. I still would like him off the bench. I don't think Chris Paul's a starter like that anymore. I think we saw the little bit of Phoenix.
That works out well, right? I think that's the best case scenario. If you bring in Chris Paul, if he's waived and you sign Chris Paul to a team-friendly deal and you don't pay D'Angelo Russell, you sign and trade him. Maybe that's it. You just sign and trade Russell to the Suns, and Chris Paul is the one who goes to LA.
Oh, I would want more than just Chris Paul for that.
Would you?
You trade a 27-year-old for a 38-year-old. D'Angelo Russell had the better year last year across two different teams.
I wonder what his value is around the league.
Huh?
I wonder what his value is. Because Russell's the ultimate player who thinks he's a league guard still and doesn't know that he needs to be Cole Anthony.
Oh, yes. I would 100% agree with you. But, also, Chris Paul is a living legend who's playing like the artist formerly known as Chris Paul.
He's 38.
Yes, so I'm not trading a sign and trade of a guy in his prime, even as with the illusions of grandeur that he has, right?
Yeah.
D'Lo's still a very good player, even if he thinks he's an all-star and he's not. But I would still rather have that.
Would you rather have D'Lo than Chris Paul?
I would for the next year. I mean, what do you get?
Just for the next year?
Yeah, I would.
Interesting.
The upside for D'Angelo exists. I mean, Chris Paul's been battling injuries the entire time. I like Chris Paul in a series. I'm taking Chris Paul. I like Chris Paul in a game. I'm taking Chris Paul. I may even take Chris Paul for 20 games.
Yeah.
But over the course of a season, over the last 3 years we've seen Chris Paul, he wears down.
Yeah.
We've seen it. He battled injuries heavy last year. And it makes sense. He's 38. Not everyone's going to age like LeBron. And mind you, LeBron looked mortal last year, right? No, if you paying Chris Paul just to sit fancy suits on the pine, while D'Lo is putting up, 21, 4, and 5, not great, but still 21, 4, and 5 more than you're getting from Chris Paul at this point. I don't know. I don't know. I think Chris Paul still has it in his bag to give you solid performances. I think that is him being the Chris Paul of even OKC are done. We're not getting Houston Chris Paul. And this might bite me in the butt. It might. I said pretty much the same thing when Chris Paul got traded to Oklahoma City. So maybe it will. And we've seen great years since then. But I think what I saw this year, it looked like the dude was juiced. It looked like he was done. Teams are going at him defensively now in ways they weren't before. Some of that's due to age. Some of that's like, hey, you can't stay with us, Offensively, he's not exploiting like he used to. He's definitely in his John Stockton mode, in my opinion. Late career John Stockton. Get you 9 points, 9 assists, couple of threes.
Plus 100 per 100 possessions. He was only plus 1.8, which was his lowest since his 2009-2010 year with the Hornets, where he was plus 0.3. Because the year before, for reference, he was 10.2. The Suns were 10.2 better per 100 possessions with Chris Paul on the floor than without him. And, I mean, it's still positive last year. But to your point, where it's like we're now like the day, like he's not going to be at plus 10.2 next year. Like that's not, those days are gone. But the shooting's still there when he wants to. He does enough where it's like the offensive rating 112, defensive rating 112 when he was on the floor for Phoenix last year. He's still a net positive year over year, and I still think he's someone that he just helps. He knows where to be. He'd be comfortable with LeBron. He'd be comfortable with AD. He wouldn't have to play a bunch of minutes. You could stagger him and Dennis Schroeder. Like Dennis could take a lot of those regular season minutes. If Chris Paul's not healthy, you still have Dennis. Maybe you bring somebody else in. Maybe there is somebody else to help carry that a little bit. Maybe it's Caruso. You bring Caruso back too. Maybe that's the other option. But
it's possible.
I don't know. I think CP makes you better than D'Angelo Russell. Now, I don't know if he can stay healthy and if you want him to have that kind of load for the regular season. But
ideally, curious. I agree. But yeah,
we'll see. I'm very curious to see what happens with D'Lo and Chris Paul and everything else with the Lakers this offseason. 30 seconds. Do you think LeBron is retiring after this year no matter what?
No, he got to play with his son.
Do you think that's still a thing?
Yep. I think he said it. I think that the smokescreen was him. I think he was very mad, very emotional. He was very close to the finals, right? Like each game, yeah, he got swept, but they were pretty close games. You could kind of see it. I could really see it like, yeah, that was a long year, and I think the emotions overtook LeBron. He's like, wow, Carmelo also just retired. He's the only player left in the 2003 draft class. Like, it's something where it's like, dang, like, I'm old, Like, I definitely think he had a moment, but no, he said it way too much and too often for him to go back on that now. I could even see him take a year away and then come back and play with his son, but there's no way in the world he retires and doesn't play with Bronny after saying all this stuff about him wanting to play with Bronny. Like, now, if I was, if I'm Bryce, then, like, sheesh, I'm not playing with my dad. You know what I mean? Like I get that, but he said too much. I really think that was just, I never bought into that. And I won't until I see it say LeBron James retired.
I think you're right about him taking a lot of time to watch Bronny. Like, I think this year he's going to take some time. Like, he's going to be doing other stuff. Like, he is going to be missing time in the regular season to go watch Bronny. It helps that he's playing at USC, not Ohio State. But I think there's going to be times where LeBron's going to, we'll see what happens with this foot, if he's even ready to start next year. I have my doubts that LeBron will be playing opening night for the Lakers going into next year based on what he was dealing with. And he looked gassed come postseason this past year. Like, he ran out of gas, and I think he knows, like, he's going to have to take the regular season even not less seriously, but just be even more careful with his minutes, with his energy exertion. Like, I think we're going to see significantly less of LeBron next regular season. But I also think this is it. I don't think he's going to play with Bronny. I think he's just going to go watch Bronny after next year. I think he'll be courtside and watch him and do all that stuff. I don't think LeBron's going to make it. I don't think he can make it 2 more full years.
Wow.
I think this is it. I don't think LeBron wants to go out on a non-contender where he's not playing important. Like, he was not LeBron. Like, remember where he just fell when he was on that steal, the dunk against the Nuggets?
Yeah, that was pretty embarrassing.
Where there were just little things. He was missing a lot of big shots. He just didn't look like the second best basketball player of all time anymore. Like, he's just at this point, which is, again, because he's still human and an amazing all-time player, but like, there is something different now with LeBron, and the LeBron of old is not coming back. I don't think. Even in spurts, you'll get a little bit, but like, I think we saw this postseason LeBron kind of inching closer and closer to that last stage of his basketball career, and he just doesn't strike me as someone who's gonna just play and grind through it when he's not the same dude, when he's going to average like 16 and 5 on 34% 3-point shooting. Like, I don't think LeBron's going to go out that way. I don't think he wants to go out that way.
Yeah, I get you. I would agree. I still, the only thing I'm holding out hope he wasn't healthy. And like, if he's healthy and he's doing that, then I'm right there in the boat.
But what if he's never healthy again? Like, to that extent, where
and
he's
that's
just
possible.
Like,
then it reminds me of another, arguably the greatest of all time, who did not look the greatest of all time when he was 38.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan, right? Injuries happen. There's a book. It's kind of decent. It's called When Nothing
He turns
Else
39
Matters.
in December, by the way. He will be 39 in December.
There you go. Yep. December 25th or 27th, 23rd.
30th.
30th. Wow. Well, there you go. Way off. Anyway, like, if he's not getting healthy, if next year's another injury-riddled campaign, then it's like the Michael Jordan Wizard years, where Jordan had flashes, the 50-point games and the pinning the ball on the backboard block over Ron Mercer. Like, yeah, moments like that. Other times he was getting just straight up stuffed by Paul Pierce and Ron Artest before, Metta World Peace. Like, all of that. Like, he had games where he was horrific, right? Those shooting numbers are not kind to MJ back then. Like, yeah, at a certain point, you're playing against the best and you were 38-39 and your body is showing that. Your knees are giving way. Your lower extremities are finally hitting you. I don't think anyone looks very good. Like, the fact LeBron's looked as good up to this point is great. Like, his 38 year, I still say is better than Michael Jordan's. Maybe Jordan's 39 is better. I don't know. But, like, I think at the end of the day, your age does come back to bite you, and maybe he's not healthy. And if so, and if he's not healthy next year, then yeah, I would be more inclined to agree with you. But for him to play the way he did, playing with a torn tendon in his foot, and being the age he is, and also being a high priority for the other team's defense still, at his age, you're not doubling Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at 39. You know what I mean? Like, that's not happening. I love, you're not doing that to Kareem. I love him. You're not doing that to the mailman. Name other guys in their late 30s, late 30s. Like, they're not getting the treatment LeBron is getting while playing injured, while still putting up pretty decent production. I mean, for me, I was surprised he wasn't the leading scorer on the team most of the postseason. It was
he
AD
still
or
had a
Austin
33% usage rate, which is bonkers at his age.
It's insane, and the fact that the Lakers needed that, like it's wild, but it is what it was, and that's wild. But yeah, until I see it, I can't. I gotta see him healthy or see more injuries keep popping up. I think now the injuries that normally would have hit him for like half a quarter are now holding him for like 8 to 12 games. That's the issue. But if he comes back fully healthy, I gotta roll with him.
His last year in Cleveland, he was 33 and played 82 games. 118, 109 offensive, defensive rating, shot 37% from three. Really, really great year. In LA, 55 games, 67, 45, 56, 54 this past year in regular season. So I just wonder, like, how low could it really go next year? Where, like, could we get back in the 40s? What do the Lakers look like if LeBron is only playing 30 to 40 regular season games? Because they barely got into the postseason this year. That's that's what people forget, is like the Lakers barely made the postseason this year. This was not like they had a great story. They obviously run in the Western Conference Finals, but like they had to scrape and claw, and injuries around the league had to go their way. And this was something where if LeBron plays 30 to 40 games, if he misses a lot of time, and Anthony Davis does not have perfect health in Los Angeles for a significant portion of next season, this is not a playoff team. And then what are you looking at if you're LA? I think that is something else we have to consider here. And LeBron had the lowest offensive and defensive rating disparity since his rookie season this past year, 114, 113 with this Lakers group. His rookie year in Cleveland, he was 99 offensive rating, 104 defensive rating. Ever since then, it's never been this close on both sides. So you look at it, I don't know. I'm not saying LeBron's going to fall off a cliff next year in terms of just playing, but I think we're nearing the end, and it just sucks. Like, it's just age. He'll be 39 in December. I don't think he's playing a significant number of regular season games. I think, Corban, I don't want to hurt your feelings.
Rip off the Band-Aid, friend.
I don't think they're a playoff team next year. I don't see how they can be.
How do you figure? Did you not?
They're going to overpay for Austin Reeves and Rui and everybody. I think,
and those guys played well.
I don't.
Their numbers post like they played.
I'm not betting on a Rui full season. Austin Reeves, I think, will be fine. I don't think Rui's going to be great. I think
they made the okay. When you say they barely made the postseason, they had to win. They had to go like something like 33-12 or something to do it, which they did. And they won the play-in game, and they beat the Memphis Grizzlies, and they beat the Golden State Warriors.
If you make the play-in, you barely made the postseason. If you're a play-in team, you barely made the postseason. But then once you do and you beat the number 3 seed and the number 4 seed, like, I think you have some validity there. And even losing to the Nuggets, who are going to win the championship, all 4 games were very close. Like, yes, it was a sweep. Bring out the dust. No, what I'm saying is, like, they almost didn't have the opportunity because they came so close to missing the postseason.
They had a 3% chance making the playoffs when they started 2-10 with the roster that they came into the season with, which was horrible. We know this. They went through that and injuries to AD, who was still playing like a monster. Yeah. And LeBron had moments too, and he was injured. Then they went to the trade deadline, made those moves. Those players were impactful, and from that moment on, the Lakers were legit. So if we're going to go by everything they were from the beginning of training camp 22, we knew that that team wasn't going to be the final product. And we also knew that team wasn't going to be great. And they weren't. Then they made the trade. So now I'm just saying, bring back the people who made you look very good in the second half of the season and the playing game and the first round and the second round. Because that was legit. I'm very passionate about this. You can tell, Chase.
56 games last year.
Huh?
Anthony Davis played 56 games last year.
And also, let's be real, he played 56 games last year, and they were very thin for most of the games he was injured. Once post-trade deadline happened, I think if you had Rui Hachimura, you have a Mo Bamba, you have a better front court like that, I think you're a little bit better. Jarrett Vanderbilt,
60 games of that?
Listen, I think you could cobble together if you had to.
Because, look, Anthony Davis played 40 games the year prior, 36 the year prior, and then 62 when he was 26. He's going to be 30 next year.
He's already 30. He's going to be 31 next year.
Yeah, he's 30, yeah.
But, again, that 2020 season, he had JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard.
Yeah.
Really good backup, solid bigs. 2021, I think you had, didn't have JaVale. I think you had Andre Drummond and Marc Gasol. Still okay. 2022, you had dog crap. It was just dog crap, right? Going into 2023, you still had dog crap. We brought back Damian Jones. Gave him a player option to do nothing, right? Thomas Bryant, who would give you points and give up just as many. Now you give me a Jarrett Vanderbilt, a Rui Hachimura, if you want to say a Mo Bamba, that's still 3 solid players. That, yeah, you're not going to be an AD. There's not a replacement for AD out there like that. But those guys still stand better than what you had in 2022. Like this is straight up. Thomas Bryant, Damian Jones.
But you still need a healthy AD.
Well, I mean, you
still need LeBron to play
win.
more than 40 games.
But I think that with this roster that you have now, you have a better chance of surviving when LeBron and AD inevitably miss those games. Because before that, you didn't have a chance. You had to hope that you had a good rust game, which, actually, you kind of had a few of those. They just didn't win those games, right?
Yeah.
I think now you have a better chance because now you have more functional. This would be a middling 500 team without LeBron and AD. You're not saying the talent they have there is like a lottery team. Now, if they're without LeBron and AD all season, then yes, they are a lottery team. But if it's just for a couple games here and there, 15, 20, I like that talent, especially that's some cohesiveness. Yeah, I think they could be solid. I think they could hold down the fort. Let's say that. Now, if both those guys are injured, no. But that's come on now. That's obvious, right? If LeBron and AD are out for an extended period of time on any team, if they were out on the dream team for an extended period of time, that's gonna be a hurt.
But that's the reality. I think they're both gonna miss time.
I don't think they're going to miss. Okay, they both missed time this year, and they made it to the conference
I'm saying
finals.
Significantly. I don't think you're going to get...
I
think you're looking at 40 max, 40 to 45-ish max for LeBron, and I think max for AD is 50. And I just don't think you're going to... It's just such a thin margin of error in the Western Conference. The Thunder will be better next year. We'll see what happens with the Blazers this offseason. I don't think the Mavericks will be as bad as they just were. You look at the rest of the West, the Clippers aren't going anywhere, the Warriors aren't going anywhere, Timberwolves aren't going anywhere, the Pelicans, it just takes them being healthy to be a top 5 seed.
So same as the Lakers, healthy. Yeah. The Clippers,
Hold on. Are we comparing the level of concern health-wise?
Yes, we are. Because, yes, we are. We most definitely are. Look at Brandon Ingram's games. Zion Williamson has played how many games in 3 seasons?
Look.
That's a fun trivia thing. I want you to look at that for me.
Yeah,
since we're doing this.
It's
it's pretty darn bad. You can't count on Zion. You can't. You count on him not being available. That's what you count
Ingram
on.
only played 45 games.
I know. I'm telling you to look. I'm telling you.
It felt like more.
Bad. CJ McCollum was your healthiest guy. And that's saying a lot. Because CJ McCollum's not the bastion of health himself. So
I can't believe he only played 45 games last year.
I'm telling you, he had a toe injury that bothered him for most of the season. But that's New Orleans. Boom, if they're healthy, put them next to the Lakers. The Clippers, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, are you serious? Put them next to the Lakers. The Thunder, they're gonna get better, sure. The Blazers, I'm not giving them any credit. They were trying to contend this year and look what happened. I'm gonna wait to see what happens there, right? The Mavericks, I'm sorry, you traded away your best perimeter defender, one of your best offensive creators, another guy in Kyrie who may or may not either be staying in Dallas, going to Houston, going to Philadelphia, going to the Lakers, and your defense has been horrible, and you don't have ancillary offensive help alongside Luka Doncic, aside from Christian Wood, who your coach doesn't like. I'm putting Dallas on the bottom as well. I don't they have question marks too. I don't see it. The teams that could be there have the same health questions the Lakers do to their top 2 guys. Memphis is probably the only team I'd be will be more or less where they are. And that's presuming John Morant's not suspended for 40 games. Right? Denver will be right back where they were. We'll see what Golden State looks like, right? Like, I'm a lot more dubious about the standings of the West than you are, because a lot of them are question marks. Like, you're right. In a perfect world, health, that's great. But right now, the only teams that I could see being more or less the same, if you don't believe last year was an aberration, then you look at the Kings, right? You look at the Grizzlies, you look at the Nuggets. We'll see what happens with the Suns. We'll see how they form around KD and Booker, because guess what? Though we thought they were going to win the finals. We thought that were going to be a monster. Injuries. Big surprise. So they're there too, right? Clippers injuries, Warriors injuries, Lakers. Timberwolves? Huh? Pelicans, Thunder, Mavericks, Jazz, Trailblazers, Rockets, Spurs. Tell you one thing, Thunder may improve, and they're going to. Maybe they win the play-in game. I don't see them winning a first-round series just yet. I think it's still one more year at least, but they might. I mean, they're well within play, but they're not a championship contender. If I'm looking at championship contenders, you name pretty much any of them outside the Nuggets, and they're all injury risks.
I like it.
I don't know.
Well, we'll see. I don't think I'm saying right now. June 11th, pretty early. The Lakers are not
it is
a playoff
early. That
team
is
next
true.
year.
That is very true, sir.
There you go. Corban Ford, what can the good folks check out from you and the just all across the internet? Writing, podcasting, what can folks check out from you?
Well, first, I have to thank you again for having me on, my friend. It's always fun talking hoops with you. You can find me on Twitter at CorbanNBA if you are so inclined. Also on Instagram at CorbanNBA, CorbanNBA. I'll have a computer back. I am good, so I'll be doing some podcasts coming out, kind of previewing the draft, talking about the offseason. Expect some work on the Switch Theory coming out soon. I did a retrospective on the Portland Trailblazers era. I'm going to be doing another one coming up soon on the Phil Jackson Knicks. And we'll be going over some other front offices, both good and bad, with the recap of what they did and lessons we can take away in terms of roster construction, team management, and the bigger topics that circle those specific years. So definitely looking forward to doing that. That'll be both in written form, and I'll have some type of podcast exercise for that as well. Also, I'm going to be looking forward to doing my historical redrafts coming up. I'm going to try to go bold. We're trying to do 30 years. So we're going to go from 93 to 2023. Looking back on the draft class as a whole, a little bit of a retrospective, a little bit of history around it, and then I'm gonna have a guest on, maybe you, anyone, welcome to come on, and we will redraft that draft with a twist. We're gonna form a draft. We're gonna draft a 5-man rotation, 6-man rotation of our or I'll even say 7-man rotation. Give it a little depth or show the weakness of a class of a functional team that we're drafting from the same class. So I did a little bit of that last year. It was really fun. Had some really cool guests. Had a blast. I want to go deeper, go into a more of a historical aspect of it, talk about some players who slipped through the cracks that we might forget about. We talked about Penny Hardaway tonight. 93 draft class, baby. Like, I want to do more of that. So, yeah, that's the summer looking ahead here.
There you go. I love it. Corban Ford, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you very soon.
Yes, sir.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.